Hi everybody, and welcome to your very first video lesson. As a reminder, this is a video lesson, so at any point in time you can pause, stop, and rewind the video so that way you can make sure that you get all of the notes within the corresponding word packet that I handed out in class. All right, so let's go ahead and let's take a look. So we are starting today our unit on descriptive statistics. Now, statistics is the study of data, and data is any information that you can go out and collect in the form of a survey or a general test. All right, so today we're going to take a look at how we can describe some of our data. So our goal for today is actually, given a set of data, you will be able to graph it as a histogram and a dot plot, describe the data, and calculate the center of the data. So there's actually three very distinctive goals for today. So let's jump right into it. So today, the first part of our goal is to be able to graph a histogram, okay, which might look familiar. You've done this back in elementary school. And also to be able to graph a dot plot. Okay, so again, this should be review for us. However, this year, what we are going to do is we are going to learn how to analyze these different types of graphs. All right, so let's jump right into it. So when we create a histogram and a dot plot, the first thing that we're going to have to do is to separate the data into intervals using a frequency table. Okay, then once we get into graphing, we put the intervals on the x-axis, the frequency on the y-axis, and we're going to title the histogram and you make sure that we use a ruler. To construct a dot plot, we're going to separate the data into intervals by using a table, list the intervals on the x-axis, place one dot for each data point above the line, and then we have to make sure that, again, we title our histogram. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at our first data set. So Ms. Koeppel's math class wanted to chart their test scores for the first marking period. So here we go. We have test grades of 48 all the way to 100. So starting at 41, use intervals of 10 to complete the frequency chart for the table. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. So we're going to start at 41. So 41, and we're going to use intervals of 10. So 41. It's going to go all the way up to, and we are going to have this go all the way up to 50. So that way we have an interval of 10. So then we're going to go 51 to 60, 61 to 70, 71 to 80, 81 to 90, and 91 all the way up to and including 100. Now we're going to go through all of our data and we're going to tally it up. So 48 is going to go in the first interval, so I put a tally there. 50 is also going to go in the first, and I cross it off. So then 55 goes into the second interval. 62 goes into the third interval. 66. All right, so I'm going to have you go ahead, pause the video, and finish completing your tallies. All right, so let's go ahead and double check our scores. So for the first interval, I have a frequency of 2, a frequency of 1, 3, 6, 6, and 6. Okay, so now that we have our frequency table filled out, now we can move down to actually create our histogram and our dot plot. So let's start with the histogram first. So as our directions say, we're going to list the intervals, okay, or our test scores along the x-axis down here at the bottom. Now my test scores start at 41, which means I'm not going to want to start my graph all the way at 0. So I'm going to go ahead and put a break in my graph. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put two rows together and I'm going to call this 41 to 50. So the next two rows I'm going to use as my 51 to 60 interval. And so on and so forth, all the way down until I get to 100. All right, so these are going to be my test scores. Okay, then along the y-axis, these are going to be our frequencies. Okay, and I have my highest frequency is 6. I can actually count by ones for this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and we're just going to shade in the boxes that correspond to the correct frequency. So if we take a look up here, 41 to 50 has a frequency of 2. So I'm going to come down here, and 41 to 50 has a frequency of 2. Okay, and then I can just shade those in to make it very distinctive that there are a frequency of 2. 51 to 60 has a frequency of 1. And I'm just going to go through and I'm going to fill in all of my frequencies. All 3 of these have a frequency of 6. Okay, and we have now created our very first histogram on frequency of test scores. So that's the title I'm going to give to this. Frequency of test scores. All right, now we can also use this data to create a dot plot. So that's what we're going to use this number line over here for. Okay, so along the bottom of the number line, just like I did for the histogram, instead of writing each number out, I'm going to put this as a dot plot by interval. 60, so I'm writing out the same intervals that I used for the histogram. Okay, and these are math test scores. Okay, and then above each of the intervals, I'm simply going to put a dot to indicate the frequency. So 41 to 50 had a frequency of 2, so I'm going to go ahead and put 2 dots above that. 51 to 60 had a frequency of 1. 61 to 70 had a frequency of 3. All right, then we have 71 to 80 at a frequency of 6. All right, another frequency of 6. All right, and let's say instead of dots, I wanted to go ahead and use little X's. You could use any symbol that you'd like. We just want to make sure it's the same size as everything else. So we have a frequency of 6. So now that we have our 2 graphs, it's very easy to see that more people graded above 70 than below 70. So now we can actually start analyzing our data by using the tables that we have just created. So now we're going to go ahead and take a look at part 2 of today's lesson. So part 1 was to graph it as a histogram and a dot plot. Now we're going to take a look at how we can describe the data. So let's go ahead and let's flip the page over. All right, there are 3 different ways that we can describe the shape, okay, of our histograms and our dot plots. The first, if you take a look at this first box, we can see how more people or more frequency is in the middle, and as you separate from the middle, it becomes less and less and less. This is what we call a regular bell-shaped curve. So we kind of see it has that nice curve. It goes up and then it goes back down. This is a very symmetrical distribution. So we call that symmetrical when most of the frequency is in the middle and then it extends outward. Now if we take a look at the next chart, we see we have a lot of data on the left-hand side. So we have this big bump and then it kind of scales out. All right, and if we look here, it's kind of like a bump and then it has a tail. This is what we call right skewed. So the data is skewed in this case. Most of the data is on the left and it has this long tail on the right. I like to think of it as it is right-tailed. That's how I know which way to call it for skewed. It is right-tailed. It has a tail on the right-hand side. That's why it's skewed that way. And if we take a look at the last data set, I see there's a big bump of data on the right and there's this tail on the left. So that means this would be called left skewed. Okay, or in other ones, it has a left-tailed data. So the tail is on the left, that makes it left skewed. All right, so these are the three different ways that you can describe the shape of the data. All right, and that's part 2, describing the data. So now we're going to take a look at how we can calculate the center of the data. All right, so describing the center of the data. Now, if you think of the word center, what do you think about? Yeah, we tend to think about, well, it's got to be the middle number. Okay, so the center, if you're thinking middle, that is pretty correct. All right, there's actually 2 different ways that we can calculate the center of our data. The first is what we call the mean. All right, now the mean is the average of all the data. All right, and the mean actually has a symbol. It's an X and it has a bar above the top. So X bar is just another way to say the mean or the average of all the data. Now we're going to use the mean as our best measure of central tendency when the data is symmetric. So when we have this nice bell shape, the mean is going to be that middle number there. All right, so let's go ahead and let's calculate the center of our data here. So if I take a look, we have 5, 12, 13, 17, 23, 27, 22, and 35. To calculate the mean or the average, we're going to add all of these pieces of data together, and then we're going to divide by how many there are. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 8 pieces of data. And then we're going to find out what we get. So we're going to go ahead, take our calculators out, and we're going to add those. So 5 plus 12 plus 13, 17, 23, 27, 22, and 35. We hit enter. And we get 154 all over 8. So now let's go ahead and let's find out what that is. So 154 divided by 8. And we end up with a mean of 19.25. So our X bar, the average, is 19.25. The second way that we can calculate our center is through the median. All right, and the median is the middle number when the data is in ascending order. So when data is in ascending order, so that's from smallest to greatest, it is the middle number. Okay. We're going to use the median, okay, as our best measure of central tendency when the data is skewed. This is going to be the best way to describe the center. So let's go ahead and let's find the median of our data set here. So we have to put it in ascending order, so from smallest to biggest. So 3, 4. Let's see, next is going to be 17, 19. Oops, there's an 18 there. Then 19. 21, 22, and 25. So to find the middle number, I'm just going to take one off from each side, take another one from each side, another one from each side. Oh, and I end up with 2 numbers there in the middle. So what I'm going to do when this occurs is I'm going to take the mean of these 2 numbers. So we're going to go ahead, 18 plus 19 divided by 2. So we're going to average them together. So 18 plus 19 is going to give us 37 all over 2, which then gives us a grand total of 18.5. So that is my median, okay, is going to be 18.5. So ladies and gentlemen, in our lesson today, we were working on 3 different things. Okay, we learned how to graph a histogram and a dot plot, how to describe the data either as symmetric or skewed, and how to calculate the center, which is our mean or our median. All right, ladies and gentlemen, make sure that you have all of the notes filled out and you're ready for class tomorrow. Bye-bye.